Very important that we hold into account, whether it's lawyers or authorities. I did a radio show with, who's the guy in Kelowna that does the radio show? He used to be a MLA. Anyway, he's great. We do lots of shows with him, and he's great fun. And we were talking about this case, and of course I was up, we were going right from the radio show to this case that was being heard in the Kelowna courts. Well, because he is the most popular radio show guy, of course the judge was listening on his way into work. So this is great. Well, and we just tell it like it is. And of course judges don't like being talked about during court cases, but that's their problem. That's not mine. So we get into court now, of course, because the baby was still underground, nobody was out. I was always checking the court file to make sure that there were no arrest warrants out for me, because you have to just change your modus operandi just a little bit if they want to arrest you, especially when you're coming up into Kelowna. So I didn't come in till after the break, and we checked the file. One of the lawyers and I went down, checked the file just to see what was happening there. Well, the Beavers had been very busy, because on that file was an order, an ex parte order, that they wanted to have me arrested on obstruction of justice. And bless this old crotchety NDP judge in Kelowna who got the case, and we were reading the transcript, because this judge had the decency to order the transcript. He says, "You want me to arrest Kari Simpson based on hearsay evidence and media reports?" He says, "I don't think so." He says, "Matter of fact, I'm going to order this transcript, and I'm going to order that it be included in this file so Miss Simpson and anybody else can see what you guys have been doing and what standards should be applied lest you try to arrest her again." So no arrest warrant. Well, we walk into court. The lawyer for the Ministry of Children and Family doesn't know, of course, that we know what he's been doing lately. And the judge walks in from the recess, and he stands up. Mark Kuchin is his name. Stands up right away and says, "Your Honor, I note Kari Simpson's in the courtroom, and there's an arrest warrant out for her." The judge, just having a glee time now, says, "Well, and I heard some very disturbing things on the radio, and I'm not sure I want you in my courtroom either, Miss Simpson." Now, excuse me, there's no way a judge has the right to order anyone out of the public gallery of a courtroom. Okay, that goes against everything that our system is about. But it did concern me, this arrest warrant. So I'm going, okay, maybe I missed one in this file. So I get up to go, and the lawyer who checked the file with me stood up and said, "Your Honor, I'd like Mr. Kuchum to explain that, because we just checked the file, and there's no warrant for her arrest." Mark Kuchum stands up and says, "Oh, yeah, Your Honor, that's right. There is no warrant." So he lied to a judge. He committed fraud upon that court. Of course, I have no reason to leave, so I go sit down. The judge just about falls out of his chair because somebody actually defied him. I just smiled at him, and we carried on. But I have now initiated private information against that lawyer for committing fraud upon the court, because I don't believe that lawyers should be allowed to lie to judges. Now, of course, that requires teaching all the people involved about the rights of citizens to lay private information. You do not have to wait for the RCMP to do it. You can do it yourselves. Of course, you have to be ready to educate everybody that comes along in the process. So anyway, the apprehension laws are all of concern, but probably more concerning now is not only what's happening within the public education system, but within the Human Rights Commission. This is a document called a Call to Action out of the BC Human Rights Commission here in British Columbia. You can obtain it off their website. It's on their homepage. It's called A Call to Action, Combating Hate in BC. And in listening to all the speakers from the States from here, I know that this is what they're going on. It's these hate groups that are forming. Well, isn't it interesting that anyone that proclaims truth and the rights of citizens is somehow now a hate monger? How convenient. The riots and issues that we've been dealing with, of course, continue with our promotion of parental rights within public education. everybody had said, well, these issues involving homosexual teachers, activists within the education system is just about tolerance, tolerance, tolerance. Well, no, people, it is not. It is about an agenda, once again, to take your children away from you, to undermine society's values and morals. This is a document put out by the homosexual activist teachers. We have not made it public yet. We will be making it public just coming up as we head back into school, probably the first week of September. This has not been out in the press. This is off their own website, and it's the Resource Guide for Classroom Teachers Moving Beyond Silence, Addressing Homophobia in Elementary Schools. What it does is tell kids all about same-sex parents. One of the books that's recommended here is My Dad Has HIV, okay? This book also tells teachers how to get around the policies that protect parental rights. Career and personal planning requires that any time sensitive subjects are taught within the public education system, that parents be notified. Therefore, the state recognizes your right to either give your authority for that information to be taught to your children or to withhold it. This document tells teachers they don't have to go there, that there's ways around it, that if they teach this kind of curriculum, for instance, in family life under the family management model, no parental notification is needed. Okay? I don't care what side of the issue anybody is on any issue, when teachers, agents of the state, undermine you as parents, you should be up in arms. Totally. They even went so far as to put in a provision on how to deal with parents who may have religious or moral objections to this. Listen to what it says. This is the direct quote. We can get you one. Objectors, this is direct quote. Objectors are entitled to their views in their own homes, but cannot impose those attitudes upon the public school system or all the other families in a given classroom. Religious points of view have no place in the classroom, and biases must be checked at the door. Okay, those are fighting words, people. Okay, what do they want my child to check at the door? The view of being honest, truthful, respecting all people. I mean, are they going to prohibit the little Jewish boy from wearing his Star of David? Is they going to prohibit the Sikh child from wearing his turban or carrying his ceremonial knife to school, which they're allowed to do? Okay? Issues we need to deal with, okay? And that leads us into the Human Rights Commission. We developed a document called the Family Declaration of Family Rights. And what that did is that allows parents on a variety of subject matters, whether it's the care program, the career and personal planning, or issues around homosexuality. See, I don't mind them talking about homosexuality as long as they tell the truth about it. Not the myths, not the propaganda, not this nice gay lifestyle. I want them to talk about the abuse that these kids suffer at home, and that's what robs them of their sexual identity. I want them to talk about the people who have come out of the lifestyle, who honestly reflect back on the pain and suffering. I want them to talk about the fact that our young men are dying at the age of 42 on average because of HIV and promiscuity. So if you're going to talk about these things, talk about the facts. There's one, I get information from all points, but I was flying to Ottawa, and there was an obituary in the Globe and Mail. And this was when they were redefining spouse here in British Columbia, our good old NDP government, right? We can discriminate. You can't discriminate against politically correct, but everybody else can be discriminated against. So we can rob, the Christian belief system of its definition of marriage. We can do a whole bunch of things as long as it's politically incorrect. But if you dare say homosexuality is not normal, and you're up before the Human Rights Commission. But listen to the absurdity in this discussion on this young man's deathbed. Now, this was James Odlum. He was press secretary to John Chrétien, okay, homosexual activist. He's dying of AIDS at age 39, okay? Brilliant career, great guy, very popular, very influential within the Liberal government as far as moving homosexual rights in this nation. But listen to this discussion. Mr. Fisher is the head of EGAL, Equality for Gays and Lesbians Everywhere, which is a political lobby group of only about 200 homosexuals. This is what's moving this agenda along, okay? And he's visiting Odlum as he's dying in the hospital. Mr. Fisher paid a visit to Mr. Odlum at the Ottawa General Hospital. Mr. Odlum was heartened by the BC government's recent decision to extend spousal benefits to lesbian and gay employees. He hoped that other governments in Canada would follow suit. This is a quote, "He called me over to his bedside, took my hand and said, 'We're going to win, aren't we?'" Now, tell me how, when you're dying of a disease that's 100% preventable from a lifestyle choice, that you're winning something at 39 years of age. But that is the thinking that we're dealing with, whether it's this or within the public education system. This call to action is an important document on a whole number of fronts. Freedom of speech, first and foremost, which is dying privilege at an accelerated rate in this province, and I think we all better start standing up, whether it's bubble zones or anything else, and very much resoundingly saying we're not going there. This document recommends that if the government believes that you are somehow affiliated with hate mongering, which is not defined, it's a very loose term, that they amend the criminal code to allow the state to come in and seize your hate propaganda. Okay? That means everything in this conference, because we all know how it's interpreted as hate, would be legally available for the state to come in and seize. Currently, the law is unclear about whether computer hard drives containing hate material can be seized. The amendment would clarify the law. It would allow the seizure of hard drives from business, individuals, and computer servers which contain and redistribute information from the internet. Okay? They want to codify the definitions of public place and possession in relation to computer technology to ensure that the current law includes materials stored on and distributed by computer disks and drives on the internet. The explanation: new computer technology is effective at distributing hate as old-fashioned public technologies. It is therefore important to ensure that the wording of the law encompasses all forms of electronic distribution that has some purposes as printed copy. Okay? Bit by bit by bit, your rights in this supposedly free society are being taken. This is very concerning to us as well. And this is one of the provisions that they want to see amended out of the Human Rights Code. Now, while the Human Rights Commission and I are having fun. We created the Declaration of Family Rights so families could express their authority within the public education system because parents cannot be there all the time. One of the declarations we did was on the homosexual issue. We said that this information cannot be given to children that says homosexuality is normal, acceptable, or something that must be tolerated. We deliberately used very provocative language because we're getting fed up with everybody watching what they're saying out of fear. Okay? That's got to end, people, and that we were equipped to do the battle and the fight. So fortunately, the activists, homosexual activists initially, did their complaint, which has been really fun. Think about the wording. Is homosexuality normal? No. Is it acceptable? Not in my house or many houses, right? We love people. I've got great friends who are gay, who I support their right to relationship with anybody and would defend it to the end because I don't think it's any of the state's business. I don't think the state should come in and decide who I can relationship with or not. If I want to give somebody the rights equal to that of a spouse without marrying them, then there's a number of legal contracts that can be signed. I don't need to change the law to accommodate it, nor do I need to discriminate against people in order to accomplish me feeling good. And I said this in the Vancouver Sun recently. He said, I don't understand why all the statists, these activists, think that the seal of mother government is so important anyway. I mean, we all run from them, go away, leave us alone, and they're going, please recognize us, please recognize us. I just don't get the psychology there. I think they're setting themselves up for something quite dangerous anyway. But anyway, so then on the issue of tolerance, we deliberately use the word tolerance because their definition of tolerance and ours are two different things. They define tolerance as somebody who actively advocates on behalf of the homosexual and gay lifestyle in a way that brings other people on board and embraces everybody into their way of thinking. Well, that's not my definition of tolerance. For one thing, I don't want my children to be taught they have to tolerate people. I don't like that. I think we respect all people. People make their decisions. Some of them are worth more than others, but they have the right to do that. You just don't simply tolerate somebody. That's a negative. Anyway, the homosexuals agree with us on that one too. They said, we don't want to be tolerant. We don't like the word tolerant. We don't think they should be taught to just tolerate us. So it's kind of fun. Anyway, we now have a human rights tribunal set for October where we have to go before them and prove that this is not discriminatory. Of course, our defense is, well, why would you want to discriminate against all the parents within the schools who don't view life the same way? So who's really the intolerant one here is the activist. But somebody had to push the envelope. Mary Wu Sims, who herself is a self-declared radical lesbian homosexual, is the Human Rights Commissioner for the province of British Columbia. I don't know if you all know about that. Mary Wu Sims has described Mary Wu, W-O-O, Sims, Wu. Careful, she'll woo you. She herself has said her duty is to assimilate everybody into her way of thinking. Okay, now what happens is when you make a human rights complaint, it goes to the commission. The commission decides if it's worthy enough. If it's worthy enough, it goes to tribunal. So we're at the tribunal state. One of the things that they want to take out of the Human Rights Code right now is a provision that says people with religious beliefs shouldn't be allowed to have exemption any longer. What this accommodated was, for instance, the Sikh religion, the Jewish religion, the Christian religion that said homosexuality is not something that we would want to see as being acceptable. It is not under God's law acceptable. So there was a provision in the code saying, pastors, rabbis, whoever spoke those would not be up for prosecution under the Human Rights Code. The new recommendation is to take out those provisions. The defense of religious belief in Section 318 should be modified to ensure that hate is not being perpetrated under the guise of religion. When religious views, listen to the wording, when religious views with undertones of hatred against specific groups are propagated to the general public by means of mass media, those views should be subject to the community standards of multiculturalism and pluralism. Freedom of religion should not mean the right to discriminate or incite hatred against other identifiable groups. Okay? So this is the propaganda spin that they're putting on these things. So, of course, my question to the hate police, who I know because of past encounters, I said, Bill, how much hate's being really done here by religious groups? He says, Kari, we don't have any on record. Okay? This is the provincial arm of the RCMP, who oversees these things. So again, we've got our freedoms and our liberties being taken away from yet still another arm of government under a different standard. And time is going to fly here. There's other concerns that we have with regard to the World Court. Has anyone been following the happenings of the United Nations and their enthusiasm for the World Court? Now, see, we have to wake up to those kinds of things because that, again, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children and all the UN conventions that are being signed, Stephen Lewis, who is our UN ambassador, again, is very much what I refer to as a statist. He wants state control of everything, population reduction, no parental controls over children, that it all needs to come from government. These things are happening en masse, people, and you need to be informed and educated and enlightened because they're happening quickly. Canada, just before Parliament shut down a few weeks ago, passed a bill talking about our participation in the World Court. That takes away our jurisdiction to pick the judges, and it's put onto a world arena. Again, I mean, we don't have enough control over our judges in this nation. Imagine what's going to happen if we have a global court making decisions over where our water should go, where our resources should go. Are we treating third world nations equally with Canada by not giving our water supplies out at reduced rates? we need as Canadians to really stand up and start watching from a broader point of view here. So I'm going to open up for questions here in a few minutes. So, we cover a number of bases. We have enough happening right here in BC. We don't have to necessarily worry too much about what's going on everywhere, but it's interesting to hear from the States because it's all the same stuff, and that's concerning. Unless people rise up and just say no, we're going to be in big trouble.
I'm just going to ask if you were aware of something called death education that's being taught here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of trends and fads within the public school system. There's death education, there's suicide prevention, there's all different kinds. They want children to get comfortable with death, so they're taking them to cemeteries and those kinds of studies. Suicide prevention, and their attempts to understand it and broaden people's understanding of how to recognize the symptoms in their friends. They're teaching kids about suicide. Well, of course, what happens? Anyone who deals with suicide knows you try to keep it quiet so you don't have copycat situations. And we have, of course, the school just broadcasting it out about suicide and how to recognize when your friend's going to die. And, of course, it just, again, plants seeds into the minds of these kids, whether, to view their home life as being problematic, and then kids seeing it in more exaggerated terms, and the minute they feel like, oh, I could just kill myself, suddenly it's taken seriously, where before it would be just a passing comment. I generally, programs in schools, whether it's bullying, whether it's sex abuse prevention, the sex education we won't even get into because it's so perverted and disgusting now, to suicide, to death. We need to just get out of that business of home and get the school back. If, for kids that are from abusive, terrible homes, you know what the greatest gift we can give them is a good, solid education and the ability to think. Okay, that's the greatest gift we can give them. The rest of it, the school is ill-prepared. When sex ed came in, it was under the guise of reducing teen pregnancies. Well, we have more kids pregnant now, more abortions than we ever did. That has been dismal failure. All the records indicate that as such. We have kids with more sexually transmitted diseases. So what have we done? We have these wonderful goals. The question is, have we acquired or achieved them? So.
Hi, Kari. Not really a question. I want to mention something that happened with my son last year. He's turned 14 in January. He brought home a notice that we were to fill out for the school board that we would list 4 relatives that could take our kids in the case of an emergency, i.e. they were talking about earthquake or other emergencies that weren't specified. And if those people that were not if they couldn't get a hold of those 4 people on the list and get their signature and identified, they wanted permission with our signature to hand our kids over to the state.
Yeah.
And
that was nice of them to ask.
Yeah. And we were looking at this notice, and we were going, we don't want to, Dale, sorry, we don't feel comfortable with this one. And he was getting in trouble at school. So finally, my husband went to the school and basically said, I'm not comfortable with saying that I'll hand my son over to the state if 4 relatives that we have put on this list can't pick him up. Because possibly someone that is not on this list might come and pick him up. And he's 14. He knows who's here to help him and who isn't. He's an intelligent person. They said, well, that's fine, but, we can't get to know every child in this school. And my husband said, well, how many people refuse to fill this out? And he said, well, you're the only one. Yeah. And my husband said, well, then there's only one child you need to get to know. Yeah. And he's pointing at, go say hi. Yeah. Also, that same year, he was to do in class a floor plan of our house, label where everybody slept for body retrieval purposes.
What? Well, that's what they say. And all these things, and add to that career and personal planning that requires your children, if they want to graduate, to go into their parents' Rolodex, get names of business associates with their phone and fax numbers, and provide them to the schools. And
that project, we also said, no, you don't need to do that one, because as far as we know, the school board has not involved in body retrieval. So this is not something you need to worry
No,
about?
well, what they did, and then I want to, because that brings up a whole myriad of reasons. Now, the first rationale for why they're doing what they're doing is called psychological preparedness. If you look at the message that's being sent to kids, is that when your family can't be there, the state will be there, okay? That right away, and that it's an okay thing to contemplate the state taking care of you. I mean, think about the message that's being sent to the kids, okay? And to the parents as well, that government is so concerned for the welfare of your child that they're willing to take him or her. I mean, lucky us again, right? Now, I agree, if there's a catastrophe so big that you need 4 people who can't get there, chances are they won't have a clue what's going on anyway, and government's going to be so overwhelmed that they're not going to be there. So the reason purposes are just non-existent there. We have to look at what the real message is.
Oddly enough, though, they also wanted you to identify yourself if you were Native on that form.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, what does that have to do with?
Well, did that go to the burial one? Because that could be significant there.
Thank you.
They also use the house plans and where people sleep and all the rest of it, because then social services was for, every year we have mandatory testing in this province, grades 4, 7, and 10. Last year in grade 7 English, children were required to write a story about their home life. Out of that, 46 families were investigated because while the teachers were grading the mandatory test, social workers were reviewing everybody's story to see what their family situation was. So again, if they have a chart of your house and the state does not believe that it's an appropriate living circumstance or up to the standards of what they view children should be living in, then they will help you accommodate different living arrangements, usually with the removal of your child.
I appreciate everything you're doing, and I just wanted to correct you on a couple of things I heard you say that disturbed me.
Okay.
One, that homosexuality is not normal. I don't believe you can make a statement like that. The next is that AIDS is completely preventable. There's some dispute over that, and I think we're here with open minds, and I think that maybe not all homosexuals are promiscuous cupcakes, if you know what I mean.
I agree.
Okay, and people are homosexual for many different reasons. So open your mind, because I think what you're doing is cutting yourself out from an entire section of population that
Yeah.
could be very helpful.
No,
Okay.
and I hear what you're saying, but let me respond to those two things.
What I'm hearing is
AIDS
you're making an issue over, it's really concentrated over the homosexual activists, okay?
Yeah.
Maybe they are wrong, and I understand there is a whole section of homosexuals that are pretty militant and pretty fucked up, but I just wanted to mention that to you, because that insulted me. I know a lot of homosexual people,
No, and
a lot of
don't-
good ones.
Okay, but
Thanks.
going back, you may want to respond, but okay, you don't want to listen. Talk about open minds and all right. Okay, AIDS is 100% preventable. Every AIDS case in this province and in this nation was either acquired through sexually transmitted purposes or intravenous drug use. Okay, we don't have those issues. Every single one of them. 96% of AIDS cases in this province, this is out of the BC Ministry of Health statistics, are sexually transmitted from homosexual male to homosexual male. Okay, period. No, it's concentrated. No, that in Africa we have that factor.
The blacks in Africa in 1978 went a lot in New York City and they gave them hepatitis B, and
Yeah.
they did the gays and IV drug users. Then he went to San Francisco and Los Angeles in 1980 and did the gays and IV drug users with
Yeah.
hepatitis B.
Yeah,
Made it like gay.
The mic, if you don't come
yeah,
up
you
to the
got to
mic,
use the mic.
it doesn't go on the
No,
page.
and there is that thinking, but there's also, I mean, I know enough of the homosexual people that we have worked with that have deliberately contracted AIDS. I mean, there's a huge, I believe you me, our research into this area is extensive. Yes, some of the population, through a variety of unbeknown to them, were injected wrongly, but I can tell you in Canada, the majority of the problem is human behavior, period.
Are you an expert
Yes, yes,
on that?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
Let's talk about that, please, because I think you're insulting a lot more people.
Well, no, I don't call it insulting. Why don't you open your mind, okay? Because we have the facts, we have the have you read the studies from the intravenous drug users and the dirty needles and the rest? Have you sat down with the people who are dying from AIDS and have 27-year-old men? Have you sat down with them the ones that have been to the party houses who deliberately contracted AIDS.
Yeah, and I don't like those people. And
Well, my heart goes out to those people because they usually come from very tragic backgrounds. Well, no, I mean serious family issues where they've been raped as 3-year-old boys by pedophiles and a number of other circumstances, okay? So yes.
I just wanted you to be more clear whether it was a homosexual issue.
In Canada, it is a homosexual, behavioral, human, intravenous drug use problem. In Canada, it certainly is. In Africa, we have, in my very studied, learned opinion of this nation, in Africa, we have different factors involving promiscuity and the inoculations and population reduction programs and experiments. Each country, and we have to be, I think we deserve the right to be fully informed on this, have different factors which contribute to the problems. You'll also note in Africa the HIV is a very different one than what we have here in Canada. Okay, I don't know if you have any information on that, but I'd be happy to send it to you. Okay. With regard to homosexuality being normal or abnormal, I don't think that there's any argument that says it's a normal when you look at a societal spectrum on it. Now, going to the issues of choice, because that's always the other discussion, which you didn't bring up, but I will. And I say this very purposely because I think we have to look very much at the truth behind issues that involved homosexuality. And without exception, the overwhelming majority of people will tell you about childhood abuse, rejection, problems within the home situation, relationships, and they deserve to have the truth told about the importance of those relationships. I just had a young man come up to me and question his sexuality and his problems with his father and all the rest of it, and he said, "Kari, I think I'm gay." And I said, you know, we all have to look at these different, you have to look at the factors in your life